Mr. President.
Senator from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may have observed,
The Senate is in a quorum call.
may I ask that the quorum call be suspended?
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may have observed in our time together in the Senate, Mr. President, I do not come to the floor of the Senate to speak very often. I try and reserve my comments for matters of particular importance and urgency, matters where I think we can make a real difference and where the debate will matter. We are debating one such issue today when it comes to the important need, the critical need to rein in the abusive practices of credit card companies that are harming thousands of middle-class families across my state and millions of middle-class families across America. Mr. President, just this last weekend, I received more than 500 letters and emails from my constituents, middle-class people across Indiana who are outraged because they rightly feel that they've been abused by the predatory practices of credit card companies. These are decent, hardworking people who ask nothing more than for a fair shake in life, and too often they're not getting it because of these abusive practices. I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you a couple of these stories. Many of them are heartfelt. I'll give you an example. This one is from a single mother. She writes to me, "Dear Senator Bayh, I am a single mother of a teenage boy, and I work 50 hours per week." She's not some deadbeat. She's a hardworking middle American at a job that I've had for 14 years. My ex-husband quit his job, and out of the blue a couple of years ago, he stopped paying child support for more than a year. Unfortunately, I had to turn to using my credit cards for things like groceries, gas, and other bills just to keep up. If you're even 1 or 2 days late in paying your bill, these credit card companies increase your percentage rate to astronomically high amounts. Because I was struggling, and a few days, not months, just a few days late on some of my credit card payments, the percentage rates on my credit cards are now between 28 and 32%. I'll never pay off these bills with interest rates like that. So many people out there, including myself, are at the mercy of these unscrupulous credit card companies that can do whatever they please. There need to be laws regulating how much these companies can charge. Americans are mired in credit card debt that will never be paid off, no matter how hard they work, no matter how hard they try and do the right thing, if the current practices don't change. My economic situation would be so much better if it weren't for my credit card bills. I owe probably $15,000 now on all my credit card bills combined, but it will take me a lifetime to pay those off because of the practices to which I've been subjected. Please fight for hardworking people everywhere who just want a chance to get out from under their debt and better their financial situations. Mr. President, I also heard from a woman from Carmel, Indiana, that's just north of Indianapolis, a few weeks ago. She had an $8,000 balance on a closed credit card account. She wasn't buying anything new. She'd always paid her bill on time, and out of the blue one day, she'd done nothing wrong. Out of the blue, her credit card company doubled her minimum payment. She's a woman of modest means, and she couldn't make the higher payment. She called the bank, and they wouldn't work with her, even though she had never missed a payment or been late, not once. Soon the credit card company started adding late fees and compounding her interest. Over the course of 2 years, her balance tripled from $8,000 to $24,000 without making a single purchase. She'd bought nothing. She'd done nothing wrong, and she's getting gouged like this. This is the kind of thing that has to stop, Mr. President. I heard from another constituent from Middlebury, Indiana, another just basic middle-class middle American, who received an offer from her credit card company to consolidate her balances on all of her credit cards at 4%. Well, that sounded like a pretty good rate, so she accepted the offer. She never missed a payment. She had paid off half her debt when suddenly they raised the monthly minimum payment by 60%. So she's paying on time, she's paying down her debt, and her interest rate goes up by 60% without cause or any notice. She called her customer service to complain, and they said they would lower her minimum payment back to the original level if she would agree to have her interest rate doubled. This woman from Middlebury is a mother. She's trying to keep her head above water, and her credit card company is making life more difficult with practices like that. Those are the kind of things that we have to stop, and those are the kind of things I hope we will stop yet this week here in the United States Senate. Here's what she wrote to me. She said, quote, I don't know what our government can do. I don't know that our government can do a thing about this, but I just wanted to be heard. Well, Here is the place where her voice can be heard. Here is the place where thousands of middle-class families like hers can come for some relief. Here is the place where over 500 people who wrote about the abuses to which they've been subjected can come for some relief. This recession has caused, Mr. President, millions of middle-class families to resort to using their credit cards a little bit more. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to try and keep ends meet. They're working hard, they're trying to get out from under this situation, and it doesn't make life any easier when they're running uphill because of these abusive practices. You know, bills are sent out so late. They arrive in your mailbox, you got 24, 48 hours to pay the thing off, or you're subjected to a late fee. That's not right. Then they start charging interest on the late fee. Interest rates can literally, because of the fine print in these bills. You know, back in the day, you'd apply for a credit card, it was about a one-page thing. Now it's 20, 30 pages of fine print, and buried in there in the fine print are the provisions where the companies can raise your interest rate any amount, any time, for any reason, or for no reason whatsoever. Those are the kind of things that need to be stopped. And then finally, when you're making your payments, they take the payment that you make, and rather than applying it to the most expensive part of your debt with the highest interest rate, they apply it to the lowest interest rate. Why? Because it's more profitable for them, even though it would be better to do it the other way around for you. Those are the kind of things that we have to correct. Now, look, Mr. President, you know me pretty well. I'm a free enterprise person. I believe in the right of companies to make a profit, and credit card companies are no exception. But they ought to make it the legitimate, old-fashioned way, not on the backs of consumers through abusive practices. And that's what we're talking about here. This also, Mr. President, goes to something else that I'm concerned about, and that is the deepening skepticism and cynicism about government in general and about Washington, D.C. in particular. They think we're all under the thumb of a bunch of special interests. Everybody's sold out and nobody cares about the average person or the middle-class family anymore. This gives us an opportunity to show, to demonstrate that that's not true, to stand up for millions of ordinary people, to do what's right, to say that the free market should be allowed to operate, but you shouldn't scam people, you shouldn't bury things in fine print, you shouldn't do a bait and switch. That's not the way you make a decent profit. That's something that ought to be against the rules, and that's what this legislation would provide for. So, for the sake of middle-class families across states like Indiana and New Mexico and elsewhere across America, for the sake of folks who are working hard trying to get out from under the consequences of this recession, for the sake of trying to restore some faith and trust in our system of self-government, it's important that we pass this credit card bill to restrain these abusive practices, to stand up for middle-class families, to do right by our citizens, and to let people know that when their voices are heard, we will answer. Mr. President, that's why I have risen today on this bill. I urge my colleagues to join with us in acting. I hope we'll have an opportunity to do that before the week is out. And I want to thank you for your leadership as well as my colleagues. And seeing none of our colleagues present, I suggest the absence of a quorum.